Hello, today we're going to be working on writing a quadratic in vertex form by completing the square, and then we're going to state the vertex. Before we do that, I just want to review what vertex form looks like. So vertex form looks like an equation like y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, where the vertex is h comma k. H is the x-coordinate, and notice how it's with the x, and whenever we are looking at it in vertex form, it's negative h, which means our vertex x value is going to be the opposite of whatever's in the parentheses. And the y-coordinate k is exactly what you see on the outside. So we are going to be working with equations that start in standard form, but we are going to have to complete the square. So that means we want to take the x's and make them into a perfect square, having it factor to be something x plus or minus a number quantity squared. So in order to do that, we're going to have to group together the x's and write it out so we can add something to it in order to make it a perfect square. So what that looks like is you'll have x squared minus 8x, and we're going to have to add something to it to make it a perfect square. You keep the plus 15 on the outside. And when you complete the square, you can't just add something to an equation. You have to keep it the same. So what that means is you're going to have to subtract whatever you put in this blank. You're going to have to subtract it on the outside. So in order to figure out what goes in that blank, you can take your b value and divide it by 2, and that would get you negative 4. In order to complete the square, you need to square this value. So notice how you put it in parentheses, you square it, you get a positive 16. But like we said, what you add to your equation, you have to keep it equal, so you have to put a minus 16 on the outside. Now the reason why this process works, dividing by 2 and squaring it, is, or to double check to make sure it works, you can look at this now trinomial and ask what multiplies to be 16, positive 16, and adds to be negative 8. And those two numbers would be negative 4 and negative 4. So you could write this as x minus 4 times x minus 4. But you know that if you write two factors twice, that's the same thing as saying x minus 4 squared. And look, we've created a perfect square, which is what we want. But now on the outside, we're going to have to combine the values to get our k. 15 minus 16, that gives us negative 1. As you rewrite it, don't forget your f of x on the outside. So we just completed the square with an a value of 1. This isn't stretched or compressed or reflected. So that's our equation in vertex form. And our vertex for this one would be the opposite of whatever's on the inside, so positive 4, and then whatever's on the outside, negative 1. Okay. Now our process is going to change if we have this a value, because if you notice, the a value is on the outside. There's not a number in front of the x that we can see, it's just 1. So if we take a look at our g of x example, we have an a value of 2. Now, in vertex form, like we just said, inside the parentheses, that first value should be 1. So what we're going to have to do is factor those first two terms, those x's, but factor out a 2. Factor out that a value. So then with those two terms, what you have left is x squared plus, and you divide this by 2, 14x, and still plus blank. Now, you might be thinking, well, why didn't we divide 18 by 2? Well, just like in this first example, we just completed the square with the first two terms because the x's are the thing that we want to factor. So in this situation here, we're still not going to include the 18 even as we factor out the 2. Even though we could divide it by 2, that's not helpful in the process of completing the square. So then from here we do the same process as last time. Take the b value divided by 2, so that's 7. We have to square it, right? So 7 times 7 is 49. But what that means for us, oops, I forgot to write minus blank on the outside. My mistake. But yeah, plus on the inside, minus on the outside. Keep your equation equal. So then from here, just like last time, we're going to put, like the number we put in the blank would go here. But because we have an a value, what that means is if we were to multiply this whole thing out, we should end up with what we started with, right? Because they should cancel each other out, what we put in the blanks. But if we simplified this, we would distribute the 2, and then we didn't actually add a 49 to your equation. We added the 2 times 49. So on the outside, you're going to have to write 2 times the 49. When we have an a value, you'll have to multiply that by whatever you filled in the blank to get you your answer. That would go here to keep your equation equal. Now when you go to complete the square, keep your g of x on the other side. You still have your a value of 2. And just like last time, what multiplies to be 49 adds to be 14. That's 7 and 7. But notice that's what the value we had here. So that's a shortcut. When we divide it by 2, that value will always be in the parentheses, squared. And then on the outside, it might be helpful for you to multiply those things out, like 2 times 49. So that's a minus 98, or 18 minus 98 on the outside, which means you have, when you combine those, minus 80. So that is your equation in vertex form. And just like last time, we got to state the vertex. Then it's the opposite whatever's on the inside. So negative 7, whatever's on the outside, negative 80. Okay, we're going to do one more example. And notice this time around we have a negative a value, but our process still stays the same. We're going to factor the first 2 terms, factor out an a value. But our a value is negative 4, which means on the outside we're going to have negative 4. When you do that, you'll have x squared left. And from here, 16x, positive 16x divided by negative 4 is negative 4x. You add your blank, keep the negative 24 on the outside, and then subtract blank. Remember, those should be opposite. Now from here, you're going to take your b value, divide it by 2, just like last time. So you get negative 2, and you square it. Negative 2 squared is 4. From here, not just 4 is going to go on the outside. Since we have a negative 4, we're going to multiply the negative 4 from the outside and the 4 from the inside together to put in the blank so it cancels out. So when you go to rewrite it, you have your h of x on the outside, negative 4. And how does this factor? What multiplies to be 4 adds to be negative 4. Well, that's negative 2 and negative 2, again, from their blank, or when we divided by 2. And then just like last time, we're going to have to combine these two. So we have minus 24, or negative 24. And then we're going to be subtracting negative 16. When you subtract a negative, that's the same thing as adding. So this is where it might seem like it's a little different, but the process is still the same. You add here, you subtract here. So when you combine those, you will get negative 8. So that is it in vertex form. And the vertex for this one is opposite. So 2, same on the outside, negative 8. And I just want to make it clear, this number is always going, whatever we fill in the blank is always going to be positive, because when you square a number, it will always be positive, right? A negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is positive. So that's why this one is always plus, and to keep it even, to keep it equal, you put a minus on the outside. All right, hope that helps.